I can see you're all very hungry, and you definitely want to go to lunch. So, while we're waiting a few minutes for a couple people to come back, and then we'll finish up this, and I'll show you kind of where we're going. The fall conference dates, if you don't know them, are September the 30th.
29th.
29th?
The first prepare training will be on Saturday, the 29th.
The 29th is prepare, and then George Bass will be there the 30th, and then the 1st and 2nd, so the conference goes through October 2nd. So our two day-long things are actually prepare will be longer. Prepare, the mass prepare curriculum, the crisis training will start, on Saturday, and that'll be a whole track in itself. And then George Bass from Florida will do, MTSS, the multi-student support, which is an integration, if you don't know it, of RTI and PBIS. So he will be doing an all-day Sunday piece. And then, we'll have our banquet on Monday. Yeah.
Well, you say September 27th?
29th through the 2nd.
Okay, cool, thank you.
So pass the word. So there's going to be lots and lots and lots and lots of choices for you to make. Not only, well, you got two choices in the pre-conference, and then there's going to be lots and lots of breakout sessions with some good stuff. One of the reasons, why I wanted a reading intervention piece and a math intervention piece is because one of the things that you're going to see in the standards is we as psychologists are going to have to embrace in this day and time curriculum. And it makes sense if you're going to do any kind of consultation at any tier, you're going to have to know something. I mean, what you learn in graduate school with consultation, there is such a thing as having content expertise. So you can't talk to a teacher about reading if you don't know anything about reading yourself. I would encourage any of you to, get the state math and reading foundation training. I'm actually really excited about one of my former students is going to do the math training, and he's now a state trainer in math foundation. And it's pretty cool to have a school psychologist up there, modeling, hey, we can do this, instead of having somebody else come in, do math. So anyway, just a plug for the fall conference. And the president can pay me later. By the way, Jennifer's doing an awesome job. I just hope she makes it. She doesn't deliver before she gets there.
Okay.
Because your due date is pretty close, right? Anyway, we love her to death, and she's providing some great leadership to the organization, and have a great president-elect as well. So we have some great leadership and a great board. The regional reps are doing awesome, as well as the other regional reps. And so, all right, look at this. This is the teacher evaluation instrument from the standards that I showed you. Now, why this is significant? Literally, this is how it's going to look. Ours is going to look just like this. So wrap your head around it. This is the range of development. So the ratings go from developing all the way over here to distinguished to not observed. So what we're doing literally is we're taking those bullets that I showed you, and we're trying to convert those bullets, into rubrics. All right? So, again, we have, a standard, we have an element, and then these would be the rubrics. know, or we're gonna have the little square, you know, just like that. And then, the other thing that's significant here that I want you to see is this is cumulative. So that's why it's and. So if you're over here, you're not only doing this, but you can do all of this. Make sense? So if you look at, for instance, teachers demonstrate leadership, and then you look at the element here, what is in here, you should see reflected in these rubrics. So, starting out, somebody coming out of graduate school, you know, ought to be here. Lots of people at graduate school come out and they're proficient, but nobody is gonna start a job less than here. Okay, so this is what we expect every entry-level person in school psych to do. And when we see the standards, when I pull ours up, you'll see exactly what that means in each standard. All right. Now, the challenge in all this is that we have so many skills that overlap in the standards. You know, one of our committee members, you know, did a matrix, you know, of all the skill sets that fall under different, you know, standards. Problem solving is all over the place, you know, works collaboratively. If we did a search in our standards of school psychologists work collaboratively, I mean, I don't know, you'd hit a massive number of times that we use that term. So, you know, the challenge that we've had, this has really been hard. The committee is actually working today. All right? So I'm here with you, but the rest of the folks on the committee with me are actually in Burlington. And it's one of those things where, you know, when we're gonna meet again, well, everybody but me can come the 20th. So, you know, I say, you guys go there, I'm going to the coast. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to, you know, complete, you know, another draft of trying to condense all this, because the challenge is to take all those standards, and at least from Gene Williams' perspective, and I'm not an evaluator, so I don't appreciate this. If you're a principal, you can't have an evaluation instrument that's 10 pages long. You know, if you have 30 teachers or 40 teachers to evaluate. So, you know, these are our standards. There is no way we can have an evaluation instrument this thick. So we've got to somehow condense it to a size that's reasonable for an evaluator to evaluate, but yet get all this stuff in here. And the way you do that is what we're trying to do now is sort out, you know, duplication. In fact, in one of our meetings, we did a, you know, a card sort. So we had all those bullets from every single standard on cards. And then we had to go around on paper and match them up with standards to see where they fit. So you can imagine what, that was literally chaos, because we're all walking around the room, you know, putting these cards on, trying to figure out where each card fits, you know, under the standards. But this is what you want to wrap your head around, because this is literally exactly what our drafts are looking like. So even though I can't roll out the draft to you because, you know, it's in-house now, nobody's seen it, if I pulled up my computer, this is exactly what you'd see. And so you see the, you know, the standard, and then you see the substandards, you know, and the rubrics. And notice also, and this will be true with ours, there will be a list, not a list, but a place for you to put, or, you know, an evaluator to put a comment. And then there will be examples of artifacts. And so we're working on our artifacts. So we're all school psychologists. We know what kind of artifacts that a school site can use to demonstrate, you know, what they're doing in all these areas. So we have, you know, people who are contributing to that. This is not meant, and ours won't be meant to be an extensive list. Artifacts are used as examples. So you could have communication stuff from SST teams. You could certainly have copies of the site report. You know, there are different pieces of artifact that we could have. The artifacts, remember, even in our case, the same as teachers, will only come into play if we have disagreement. You know, meaning that, you know, your evaluator thinks you're here and you think you're here, or thinks you're not even doing it. So your evaluator says, well, you're not doing that. And, oh yeah, I am doing it. Here's my artifact. Okay? So that's how it's gonna roll.
Is there a formal way, if you disagree with your evaluator, an appellate process? Or is it just with your evaluator, where you really feel strongly that your rating should change? Or the rubric category should change?
That's probably gonna be, you know, a local kind of decision. I mean, it would be between you and the evaluator, but then if there was some kind of appeal process, that would be a local, you know, decision, and if there's an opportunity for mediation, but hopefully that wouldn't happen, because I think in the case, for instance, we have a lot of school sites, because they're school-based, you know, that are evaluated by their school principals. And we're gonna be training anybody who's evaluating a school psychologist, including principals. But a principal may not know everything you do. And so that's where the artifacts, you know, may come into play. So I just made a transition from, you know, the teachers to our standards. So if you haven't looked at our standards, this is kind of our opening statement of vision. And then what you see here, you know, are domains of training. You know, and some of these I pulled out of NAP's domain, some of these I pulled out of other domains, but these are collectively, you know, skill sets, you know, that we have. And here's the other thing to remember about this process. And the reason I said you're not going to have any surprises. Because somebody in our committee asked, well, can we change any of the wording or writing of this? In other words, they wanted to know if we could sort of tweak it. in a different way, or write it in a different way. Maybe to have something fit in, or maybe to take something out, I don't know, I can't speak for the person. But the point I want to make is, what Gene Williams has said, who's heading this team up, is no. Not for us, not for school counselors, not for social workers, not for teachers. We cannot change anything in the standard description or the element description. So that automatically tells you, whatever you see in these standards as a description for the standard, right here, is not gonna change. And the reason it's not gonna change is, remember, this has been approved by the state board. And remember, before the state board approved it, the state board required, in that presentation, and I was there, a whole list of people that had the opportunity to provide public comment during the public comment period. So school psychologists provided comment, directors of EC provided comment, principals provided comment. These standards are not new to any of them. They all had an opportunity to comment on our standards, and the state board wanted to see that list of people. And then what Teresa Smith did was filter those public comments, into me, including comments from you. And then I had to sort out, whether that was an isolated comment or a comment that was worthy of change in the document. And some of those were, and some of them weren't. So some of them I didn't change anything, and some there were changes that added some things in there that actually made it a little bit, better. Got lots of comments, as an example, which we would get anywhere from school psychologists, about, well, do we have to have APA ethics in there, or do we have to have NASP ethics in there? Or should we have both? And we already had that discussion at a committee level, because some people didn't think we needed APA in there. Anyway, you see them both. That's just an example. So there were comments all along the way. But that's how they were all sorted out. But I want to make 2 points: that everybody had an opportunity to comment on these, including different groups. And because of that, and because the state board approved these professional standards for us, the standards aren't going to change. The only thing that we are trying to do now is to take what's in this instrument, just like the teachers, and literally we're working on rubrics. And the rubrics are coming, from the bullets. So anything you see under a standard or a substandard in a bullet, we're looking at every one of those. And what we're trying to do with this matrix is to look at the overlap or duplication of bullets. So a principal, how many times does a principal or lead psychologist have to rate you in collaboration? You collaborate, you collaborate. It doesn't need to be 10 times in an evaluation document. So that's kind of what we're trying to sort out. Because when you look at it, how many times do we have to reference that a school psychologist can do problem solving? So we're trying to sort out the duplication, but and get the instrument to a reasonable level that any evaluator could use, but yet, as I pointed out in the first meeting that we had on December the 7th, I have a lot of blood and sweat invested in this. And so does the standards committee. And so our instrument, the point I made is, I want our instrument to have the integrity that the standards do. So we're gonna maintain the integrity of those standards, you know, in our evaluation process. So you can look at each of these standards, and if you haven't seen this, if you go to the DPI webpage and just Google school psychology, you know, you will hit Carolyn Hextall's link for school psychology, and there you will find these standards in a PDF format. And you can print them out, you know, just like this. And if you look at these standards and you follow the flow of what I just said, and you looked at the teacher's rubrics, if you're at the fall conference and you come to one of those sessions, you're gonna go, that's it, no surprise. Okay? So, actually, most of you already know, from what I just told you, that nobody else knows. Okay, because you're the first group that's ever heard any discussion about what we're doing with the rubrics. Okay? Although I knew long ago in the standards, because I was told that your evaluation instrument will come from the bullets. And when I worked on this thing, every single bullet had to be in that element. So if somebody looked at the element, even a state board member, you know, and then looked at a bullet, they could find it somewhere. Yes?
I was just wondering, as I was reading the information as you show it there, is there a model of services that will fit better into this assessment instrument? For example, would it be easier to be evaluated and show your skills if you were spending more time in the schools, or those psychologists that are school-based, or does it make any difference?
I don't think it makes any difference. I think this instrument and these standards, honestly, I'm upbeat about this and I'm positive about it, because I think, as I talk about this in my class, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Now, is everybody gonna embrace it? No. Did every teacher embrace the others? No. But, you know, I've been in this a long time too, and I think this will allow any of us to make whatever individual choices that we want in practice. And I think this instrument allows us to finally, it's one thing to tell a principal or tell somebody, well, you know, I was trained in this stuff in graduate school. But now you can show them. And I think that can make a difference for some people. Now, I think if, you know, I would also, if I were talking about assessment, I would probably frame assessment differently than some people frame assessment. You know, I do assessment in a problem-solving RTI framework. And so my assessments might look different. And I'm convinced that because of that, I may not be assessing everything. All right, so this is gonna play out differently in different models. But I think the skill sets are here for everybody to pick and choose the goal in the instrument, nobody, including myself or anybody, is literally gonna do everything in these standards. Please make sure you understand that and communicate that. That is not the expectation at all. The expectation is that we're at least doing something in each of these. That's all it is.
Two questions. Did I miss a projected date as when the instrument will be released?
Nope, you didn't,
Okay.
because that's where we're going next.
Okay, and then secondly, maybe what we need to do on our end is get copies of these standards and take to our supervisor to say, this is what we're gonna be, the DPI says we need to be evaluated on, and we're just getting copies of this, the rubric is coming. But that could open the door to the discussion that we need to be doing something besides just testing.
Yeah, that's what you should be doing right now. And you can tell them the rubrics are on fast track and they're coming. Okay? And I'm gonna show you the timeline. So I just put this in here because we just came out of our standards to show you that ours is gonna flow the same way. Okay, so these are gonna be your grading, rubrics here. So here's our timeline. And this is sort of gonna get us, to the end of this, so we're in great shape. This is when we had our first meeting. I've listed all the meetings that we've had so far. That's not important. I just put them there for reference. And all of what we've been doing here is working on drafts and development, of the rubrics. And we have had 6 or 7 meetings. I added them up, including today. They're working, trying to finish the last part of what we worked on last time. So we've been through after each one of these meetings, we've done work in between. So these have been all day meetings. And then then Jean Williams would make the changes. Then she would send it out for us to review and work on again. And then we had already set another meeting. Then we would come back in and we would talk about it as a group. You know how that goes, to get everybody on the same page. And then we would do some more work. So what we're looking at, well, here's today's meeting. We're gonna be meeting on the 14th, so I will be at this 14th meeting. We're hoping at this 14th meeting, we pretty much have it done. Because here's what you see that we're shooting for in May. We're hoping to actually do a test drive. I called up 2 LEAs this week and asked them specifically if they would be willing to send 2 or 3 of their psychs along with their evaluator to a given place, late May, early June, that Jean Williams will head up, because she told us we're not invited. Okay, so we don't go, we can't go to the show, including me. And what she wants to do, so we're gonna try to get a sample of psychs and their evaluators, and she wants to take them through a test drive of the instrument. Makes sense, right? Because we wanna see from the perspective of an evaluator, how this is working, and the perspective of a psych. So we're shooting to get, this done so we can get to here. And then you see in June, we're hoping to finalize, so after this happens, then we might come back you know, and make some, you know, fine tuning adjustments based upon the test drive. And then, finalize development, which is what that means, and then Gene Williams and DPI will select, and I suspect DPI will be the one that will do it. Although we have had discussions about how we're gonna pilot it. Meaning what methodology we're gonna use to get our sample. Make sense? So we've had some discussions on that. So from a research methodology standpoint, you know, we're looking at what kind of sample size we want and how we wanna get that sample size, you know, and, what groups, and then we're gonna be piloting this thing, or at least setting the stage in June. And then, in August, we're gonna be doing, or she or DPI, somebody there, won't be me, will be training sites and groups to use the educational, you know, in the educational system. We'll be training people to use it. And in September, you know, we hope to begin pilot testing. And what I mean by that pilot testing literally is our validation study. So that data will be our data that we will use for validity, you know, of the instrument. Remember, because this is an employment instrument, which is also why DPI has contracted this out, you know, to, you know, another research group. And that same group has had all of the instruments. She is also working with the counselors, you know, and the social workers, okay? So, you know, one day she might be meeting with us, because she's actually comes in from Colorado, so she flies in. So when she's here, she's meeting with these different professional groups and working, you know, on their instrument. So this is what I talked about. Since we're gonna be rolling it out here, I'm hoping by the fall conference that we'll have some, you know, information sessions and at least one feedback session, which I've already submitted to do there. We hope to have all the data collected from the validation study by May 2013. Remember, these are approximations. But I'll show you when we get to the end here. In June 2013, you know, data analysis and validation. Then in 13, and these are timelines that she set. So these are not timelines that I set. Okay, these are timelines that she's actually rolled out. This is the goal.
Jim, I guess I got a question about, okay, validation study, what is the standard for validation? How is validity of this assessment, of this system, of this thing determined? I mean, is there some standard of competent people that it you know, that we're comparing, that it helps to increase the number of competent people, or how is it determined to be valid?
Well, it's like anything else we do. If you develop a survey, you want to make, when we talk about validation, we're talking about, you know, does this thing have face validity? Is it assessing what we want it to assess?
Okay, all right.
That's what we're talking
Gotcha.
about.
Okay.
Because it's important, because this is gonna be made or used for employment decisions. What it means is if a person gets bad ratings, they could potentially be fired. Well, if someone is fired using any instrument, the instrument has to have solid psychometric properties. It's the same thing you do in graduate school if you develop a survey. And why, if you're doing a thesis and you use a survey, you know, or us as psychologists. I mean, that's how we choose our instruments, based upon the validity and reliability. So if you follow this, and she's gonna be writing the validation study, it would be presented to the State Board of Education in 2013. And all work must be completed by December 31st, 2013, because end of contract. The reason it's end of contract, the only reason we are here now talking about an instrument, because for 2 years I have been ringing, you know, DPI's ear, right? That's what Angela Quick told us in a meeting last week. See, I've gotten emails from Jim Penny for 2 solid years. And all the emails were pushing buttons to say, look, when are we gonna get our instrument? We have the standards, we need an instrument. Always in those responses, it was about money. And then I would email, so why do we ever start a project without full funding? Kind of like IDEA, right? But here's why it has to end, and here's where the gold mine came in. DPI is using Race to the Top money. So that money runs out at this date. So not only did it help us, but because, you know, she was able, Angela Quick was able to use that Race to the Top money for us, you know, then it also helped out, you know, the other groups. So how fast is this thing happening? If this thing literally is passed by the state board in December of 2013, it's done. It's approved. You know, it's a matter of from there, you know, how, you know, DPI disseminates it. But legally, you know, once that State Board of Education passes it, it's a legal instrument, which we will, you know, begin hopefully to roll out immediately. Okay? Now, you know, if it gets passed here, you know, whether it will take in effect, you know, whether they will roll it out in January or the next fiscal year or academic year, but this is our benchmark. This is what we're shooting for. So it's pretty close, okay? Because we're talking about, you know, this next academic year, that we're gonna see a lot of things happening. And we're moving very fast. She sent an email out last night, which I picked up, saying, you know, we got to work hard. Because if we don't, we're gonna miss some of these benchmarks. And if we miss them, we're not gonna be, you know, in a place where we can, you know, follow this flow. So we, you know, we're gonna get it. We're gonna may have to work in between, but we're gonna get it done. So, questions, comments? We got about 6-7 minutes, perfect timing. I'm gonna get you out of here for lunch.
Jim, I got one burning question, okay? These people that are working on this today, who's doing their testing for them?
I have no idea. I don't know, but the people on the committee which you saw are pretty, you know, passionate about it. And I'll point out that everybody on the committee, because Jean asked me to help her with this, represents all size school districts. So we have some regional representation across the state, and we have big and we have small. So we tried to be selective about making sure that we represent, you know, even the smaller, you know, districts. And we've had those conversations in our meetings, from someone who's in a system where there's only one or two of them, and, you know, well, you know, my principal does this, and, you know, he better understand this, and I can't do all these things, and, yeah, I mean, we've had those discussions among us as a group. But that's why, you know, I keep reinforcing to people that the expectation, and I say that because a lot of school psychs are freaking out. They see the standards and they say, there's no way I can do all that. Well, you're not expected to do all that. You're expected to do something in all those areas, and we're expected to use this document and to use the evaluation instrument to guide our drive-ins and to guide our fall conference. If I put our fall conference on top of our standards, there's stuff in there that will support every single one of those standards. So we're trying to create opportunities there. And I know one of my interns who's in Wake has done a research project this year, because she has to do a research project. But she used the NAS self-assessment on the Wake County folks. But the reason the lead psych in that county, why it was important to her, was that they're gonna use her results to drive CPD training, you know, in Wake County, contingent professional development training. So when she analyzes her stuff, you know, and I've seen some of that because I'm mentoring her. We already know the domains, at least psychologists in Wake have reported, and that will be used to drive their professional development. I'm just saying that's an example of how a county might be able to use this even at a local level to drive their own professional development, and how we can use it as a state organization to drive what we do to provide quality professional development opportunities for our membership. And I know all of you can't be involved in those discussions. I would encourage any of you in here to, if you're not a member of the association, to join it and to be active. You know, volunteer to run for an office, volunteer to work for a committee, and to have a voice. One of our big discussions we're having now is about, you know, leadership development and trying to get some new people aboard that, because it's our state. The other thing I would end on a positive note, as a state in the area of school psychology, we are in the forefront. We are ahead, believe it or not, in most states. I went to NAS this year, and I went to one of the assistants to state meetings, along with some other people on the board, and they had some breakout sessions. One of the breakout sessions that they had during the all-day, you know, assistance to state meeting, one of the breakouts had to do with an every state was represented in the room. You know, some leadership, whether it was a president or president-elect or someone else like me, or, you know, and they could have, up to 3 or 4 or whatever. But one of the breakout sessions was on performance evaluation. And you know, there are some states that to this day do not even have a job description of what a school psychologist is. I was the only person in this group of about at least 20 or 25 states represented that was this far along. Hardly anybody had any standards. And some states were just beginning to have discussions. And a lot of states that are trying to develop an evaluation instrument, they are piggybacking now off of the NASP practice model. So they're trying to take that practice model and use that as a way to create a job description, as well as an evaluation instrument. Here's the other significant piece you should be aware of. See, I'm just like a college professor. I tell you you're gonna get out, you never get out. And my class always goes,
Baptist preacher.
yeah. Over half of the people in that group that I was with, at least part of the school psychologist evaluation was gonna depend on student outcomes. You know what that means? Same as teachers, because teachers actually now have a standard of 6. Because teachers in North Carolina, part of their evaluation depends on, positive student outcomes and achievement. Some school sites have that. And it may be in one of their schools, or it may be if they have 3 schools, a designated school. I took that back to the committee. That's not gonna happen to us. Okay, none of this is gonna affect us relative to how students perform in any of our schools. Is it affecting teachers in this state? Yes. And it's gonna continue to affect teachers in this state. But it's not gonna affect us. So we should be proud of the work that we've done as a profession and as a state. We should be proud of what we do. And I would just say that rather than throwing up barriers to this, embrace it. Embrace it. Use it to advocate for yourself. Not only advocating with your superintendent, but I was a school board member for 8 years. You better be advocating with your school board. School boards make every single final decision on any budget, not the superintendent. The superintendent submits, a budget to the board, but only a Board of Education can pass it. So when you're advocating during School Psychology Awareness Week and every other opportunity you have, honestly, take an opportunity to talk to your school board members. If you know somebody locally running for a school board, you better be talking to them about, you know anything about school psychology, you know anything about education. Invite a school board member to go out to lunch or have coffee. Maybe think about, as a group, presenting to your school board as a group on something that you are doing in school. Honestly, the reason we have gotten stuck in what we're doing is because we do it, but we never tell people anything else we're doing. And you have to share it. You can't expect someone who's a school board member, who is a community member, maybe that has a business, to to know anything about school psychology or the difference between a school psychologist and a counselor or a social worker, let it know, let alone know what in the world you do. Bottom line is, folks, we have to educate people in our profession as well as advocate. Okay? I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all the great comments you made. And maybe you'll see yourself posted on the NCSPA website.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.